You're listening to Breach Your Mind, a podcast dedicated to helping others navigate the choppy waters of life and gain perspective on today's issues.
Hey guys, welcome back to Breach Your Mind. I hope everything's going well with you today. Today's episode is one that, I got to thinking about years ago. It's probably something I've been thinking about for even longer. But in particular, this episode's about getting lost in the little things. There's little things in life. We kind of lump everything all into just calling it life. But there's actually a lot more to it than what we really give it credit for, at least on most days. And most specifically in today's episode, we're going to be talking about time, relationship, and jobs. Those are some of the things that crossed my mind when I got to thinking about it. And obviously I don't believe that that's everything, but these are three of the topics inside this whole episode here that I think are the biggest ones, at least. Now, I will say that with the thought process of breaking this down into these particular categories, these are much broader topics, or at least they can be more broader topics. Obviously relationships, jobs, things like that. You can always have a lot of other mitigating factors in those things. And, I think we all know that relationships and jobs in particular can always be a lot more dynamic and complicated than trying to break it down into something smaller. But let's go ahead and start talking about time. So what got me started thinking about all this was time itself. I was sitting there one day and was thinking how it just seemed like I never had enough time for anything. That, back when I was a kid, I remember it seemed like time took forever. When you would start school, it always seemed like the school year took forever. Always took forever. And then your summertime comes along, and at least when I was a kid, we had about 3 months out of school for summer, and there were days where it seemed like summer was flying by. Most of the whole summertime seemed to kind of fly by. Obviously, there were days where it wasn't that way, but for the most part, it seemed like summer just kind of flew by. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, how come it's never like that? How come it's never like that anymore? As an adult, it all just gets lumped into an entire year. You start out the new year, and you're like, all right, this year I'm gonna accomplish this. This is the year I'm gonna do better with my weight. This is gonna be the year I do better with my fitness or my finances or whatever. And you're thinking, I got an entire year to do this, 12 whole months to start working on this. And by the time you get to December and you're approaching the end of the year and you kind of reflect back on the things that you wanted to do, often enough, you didn't really get to where you wanted to, or maybe you didn't even start at all. I know a lot of times we we apply it to fitness. This is the year that I'm going to lose weight and work out and do this, that, and the other. And get to the end of the year, and you went to the gym for a few months, but then something happened along the way and you quit going. And then you're looking back and you're like, man, God, I just don't know what happened. Why didn't I lose the weight that I wanted to, or why didn't I get as strong as I wanted to for the year? And you're trying to figure that out. It just kind of seemed like time slipped away from you. And when I got to thinking about it, I didn't know at first, at least for my own satisfaction, I'll say. Because obviously I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. But I got to thinking about it, and in regards to time, when I was a kid, what did I have on my schedule? As a kid, I didn't have a schedule. With the exception of when school was in, And when school was in, it was wake up, get some breakfast, get dressed, brush my teeth, and go to school. I'm there for 8 or so hours, however long I was in school for. And then it was come home, do the homework, do the school chores, wait for mom to get home, eat dinner, watch some TV, play, do whatever, and then brush my teeth and go to bed. Rinse, lather, repeat. And that was how my days went. Of course, into Friday gets there, and it's the weekend, and it's a matter of getting up early in the morning and Saturday morning and turn on the TV and watching cartoons while eating a bowl of cereal or whatever was for breakfast that day. And then you're outside playing the rest of the time. So, other than school, there wasn't no schedule. We didn't have all these things planned out for the day. But once you get out of school, it's a whole different ballgame. Now, like I've said before, I didn't go to college right after high school. So it was graduate high school and have a little bit of my summer. And then I went off to basic training. Everything changed after that. Once we hit that adult world, we have to start planning things a little better. Even if you're not the most responsible adult, if you're going out and you're working and doing the things that most adults have to do every day, your life starts getting more scheduled. Start penciling in more things during your day. Let's say traditional adult, run-of-the-mill, average kind of day. You're getting up, and even if you don't have kids, you're getting up and you're getting breakfast ready and getting whatever you got to get ready for work, and then you're going off to work. And that's all you're doing that day. Then that day kind of goes like it did when you were a kid. But you go Monday to Friday, if you're lucky. And if not, Monday through Saturday, Monday through Sunday. But along with just going to work, well, now you're having to pay bills. Now you're having to schedule your own doctor's appointments. You're having to schedule all these different things throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout the months. And that's how it winds up going. So now all of a sudden, as an adult, even early on, we're having to occupy our time with things that are much different than they were when we were kids. And all these different things that we have to dedicate our time to start taking up our day, our week, our months, our year. So we're left with all of these things we're trying to accomplish in that time frame, whereas when we were kids, we didn't. Well, now because we're dedicating so much of our time to it, now all of a sudden we don't have as much to enjoy the things that we want to enjoy. So it just kind of, in my mind, makes sense that since we're allocating so much of our time to other things, well, that's the only thing that makes sense as to why it seems like time flies by when we're adults. Because when we were kids, we didn't have things to occupy that time. It was whatever we decided, Heck, even if you were a teenager that could drive and go do your own things, even if you had a job, and this is, average kind of teenage stuff, it was school and work throughout the week and the weekends. And in the summer, it was just work. But for most kids, the only bills you really had was, maybe paying for your gas or paying for your social life. When you wanted to go out to dinner or, movies or whatever it is kids want to do nowadays. So even then, your life just nowhere near was as scheduled. There wasn't so much stuff, so many things that were vying for your time. And then you go and you add in having kids. Well, there goes all the rest of your time. Obviously you still need to carve out time for yourself, but you add kids into the mix, even if it's just one. And there goes the rest of the time. Now all of a sudden, there's another life that's depending on what time you're going to dedicate to it. So, to me, it makes a whole lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense that because we're allocating so much of our time now as adults, at least responsible adults, we're allocating so much of that time, it only makes sense that it seems like it just goes by so fast. You know, if you think about your typical days where you've got things scheduled, you know, it's get up at this time, leave the house to get to work by this time, or an appointment by this time. And once you get to your job, you know, it's you're here until this time, and then you take a break, or maybe you don't get to take a break until it's lunchtime. So you're looking at that 3-4 hour span from the time you start till the time you get to take lunch. And then it's another, 4 or 5 hours, 3 hours, however your working day is, until you get off, So we've got these sections of time, these chunks of time carved out. And the only thing we're thinking about is these small sections of time. So, yeah, that started to make a lot more sense to me. And once I started to think about time, why time, which is a relative thing, but time, when it's flying by so fast because of all these little things that we've started to put into it, well, when I started to apply that to other things, like relationships. So think about your relationships, whether it's a friendship or one with a significant other, a spouse. Think about when the two of you, let's focus on, say, a significant other, like a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever your designation for that relationship is, your partner. Let's think about that. So when you started that relationship, everything was new. You're learning the things about each other. You're learning each other. You're learning all the eccentricities that make your relationship so special to you. And they call it the honeymoon period. That time during the relationship where everything is rose-colored glasses. Everything's new, everything's fresh, and you just love each other so much, and everything's just great. Whatever curveball life throws you, there you are. Then time goes by, and you start finding these things that maybe you don't really like. Not everything, but there's things that you don't like, or you have a whole list of things that now all of a sudden you didn't even realize were there, but were there the whole time. Now all of a sudden, it's an issue. And you start adding all of this time together and all the stressors of life and everything else. And now all of a sudden, the relationship doesn't have the magic, the pizzazz, the spark that it once had. Now you're finding yourself spending more time finding things wrong with your relationship than you are enjoying your relationship. Now, again, like I said earlier, obviously, relationships can be much more complicated. There can be a lot more outside influences that make it more difficult or have made it this way. Money, the loss of a loved one, you name it. There's a million and one different things that can make the relationship difficult. So when you're sitting there thinking about the relationship, let's stop and look at the whole thing. I'm sure many, if not all of you, have heard the phrase or the advice for you to stop and think about what caused you to fall in love with that person to begin with. What caused you to want that relationship? What caused you to want to spend your life with that individual, with that person, to begin with? Now, maybe it's cliche because it gets used so often nowadays, but it's a real thing. You stop and think about it. Look back over your relationship. Are all these little things that you've discovered throughout the years, is that what's taking away what's made your relationship so special? Were any of these things there whenever the relationship started? Chances are they were. You just didn't notice them. again, obviously things in life can change. You know, a person's health can change. A lot of things can change somebody's mental aspect and how they view the world or how they handle certain situations. But chances are, a lot of these little things used to be there. You know, they were there the whole time. They were just covered up by the fact that everything was so new. Everything was so wonderful. So you overlooked them. So maybe the relationship hadn't changed at all. Maybe the relationship is the same relationship it's been this entire time, but because you've been together for so long, you know, and obviously the time frame can be different from everyone, but maybe you've been together so long now that all these little things, you finally started noticing them. You finally started paying attention to them. You know, for one reason or another, you started picking up on it. And now all of a sudden you're sitting there looking at it, and that's all you can think about is all these little things. And where I kind of come to with that was, well, if all these things were there from the get-go, we just started paying attention to them, well, it doesn't really change the relationship. You know, we've just gotten lost in these little things that come up throughout the relationship, and we've lost focus on why we fell in love to begin with. Again, you know, and I can't emphasize this enough, obviously there's a lot of things that can change that. You know, that has absolutely nothing to do with noticing these little things. But if those things don't exist, has the relationship really changed at all? You know, is the relationship still the same? Let's say you didn't have kids. Let's say you still both have the same jobs that you had when you first started out. Let's say that you've got the same friends. Nothing in your lives has really changed all that much. You know, maybe you're making more money and things are going a little better for you than they were. Maybe you've got some new cars, you know, but your bills are paid. You don't really have anything to worry about, per se. And you're still thinking about this. You know, maybe it's not the relationship that's changed, just your perception and you getting bogged down in all these little things that now all of a sudden you've noticed. Now, I had my mother-in-law say to me after my father-in-law passed away that one of the things that used to annoy her the most about her husband, and they were married for a very long time, but one of the things that used to annoy her was his snoring. You know, he was a large man, so when he's snoring, you know, you're sitting there, you know, imagine anybody else snoring. He's laying next to her, and he's over there cutting logs, and, you know, she can't sleep. But one of the things that she told me was it was him laying there snoring that she missed. That was one of the things that she missed. She missed having him lay there next to her snoring. It was the little things that she was missing. You know, obviously she missed him, but it was all these other little things, you know, the little things that we used to get bogged down in. You know, here when he was alive, she was frustrated. She didn't like it. That was one thing she didn't like about him, was the fact that he snored so loud. But when he was gone, well, now all of a sudden, that's one of the things she missed. You know, and thinking about it in my own relationship, you know, I can only imagine if something were happened to me, while, you know, maybe my wife would be happy that she's not having to elbow me or, you know, hit me or whatever the case is to get me to turn over, because I'm, you know, sitting there snoring directly in her face. You know, what if that was one of the things that she missed about me? You know, now all of a sudden she's laying in this bed alone at night, and she doesn't get to hear that. You know, obviously I'm not saying that's what would happen. I don't know, but you know, that got me to thinking about it for the relationship aspect. You know, we get so bogged down in all the little things that we start picking up and noticing over the years, the things we'd never noticed when the relationship started out, and that's what we're letting make the relationship not seem so great. And then something drastic happens, like the loss of that loved one, and now it's those little things that used to bog us down that we miss the most. You know? it was something that I found kind of interesting, and something that I definitely try to apply in my own relationship nowadays. I notice the little things. Once you notice them, there's no not noticing them. Kind of think of it when you're watching TV and you're really into a show, then someone in the room points out the fact that it's in letterbox. Now all of a sudden, as soon as they say it, you kind of glance at the TV. Now all of a sudden you notice that, well, the whole screen's not full with the picture you were watching anymore. You've got these big blank black boxes on each side of the video now, or on top of the video now, widescreen. You didn't notice that before. Now you can't unsee it. That's how that would work. But those little things, man, those little things, they can, if you focus on them too hard, they can make you look and think less of the relationship and make you lose focus on why you fell in love with that person to begin with. At least to me, it makes sense. So that's what I'm applying to my own relationship, and I have for several years now, and it's really helped out. Now I'm not focusing so much on those little things that were frustrating me and seeming to take some of the pizzazz out of my relationship. I've been married for 21 years at this point, with my wife for 22. So I got quite a bit of time to sit there and notice little things. But like I said, once I quit focusing on those little things and got back to why I fell in love with her to begin with, well, it changed things. It brought some of that pizzazz back that I started to wonder where it had gone. Now there's been a lot that's happened in those 21, 22 years, but the core of why we're together never changed. Those things about her that I loved when, we were 18, 19 years old, well, they're still there. Those things haven't gone anywhere. I just kind of got lost in the little things that showed up throughout her relationship. Just something that was interesting to me, And once I was able to get past that, I saw things a little bit differently. Let's get to jobs now. When you're thinking about jobs, maybe you've had your job for, a year, 2 years, 5 years. Maybe you've been at your job for 20 years, and you're looking back over that career. And in that time frame, the job hasn't changed. Maybe you've gotten a new position and you have some new responsibilities or whatever. But as far as the work that you do, well, your work hasn't changed. Law enforcement officer, every call is differently, or every call is different that I have to go to. But every single day, the calls keep coming. There's domestics, there's civil issues, there's criminal issues, there's traffic issues. So the work that was there whenever I first started so long ago, well, the work itself is still there. So what's changed? Obviously how we handle the calls and handle certain situations has to change as time goes on, because you have to be flexible and you've got to be willing to change as society changes. But the work is still there. So what is it that winds up making us go from enjoying and loving a job that, we had for a while to not liking it? What makes us go to not looking at our jobs the way we once did? Obviously, if you've remained at a job for quite a while, obviously there's a lot of other dynamics in here that can play in. But let's say you've been at a job for a while. Hopefully you haven't dedicated years of your life to a job that meant absolutely nothing to you. I mean, obviously if you didn't have any other choices, you didn't have any other choices. But most people that have dedicated, I'd say, more than 5 years to a job, at least that was the goal that I had set for myself. That was my personal goal, was, if I make it to 5 years, I'm not going to just up and quit at that point, because at 5 years, I've got a lot invested into that job. A lot of time, a lot of me. So I wasn't going to abandon it, at least not easily. So if you spent any considerable time at a job, obviously there's going to be something about that job that you really liked, something that kept you there all that time. And it wasn't just the money. Obviously if you're making a whole crap load of money, that's a pretty big factor to keep you there. But there's something about that work that kept you there as well, because money's not everything, right? So what changed? I don't know, there's a lot of memes or little motivational things that go around nowadays that say people don't leave jobs, they leave bad managers, they leave bad bosses. And that's, obviously true. Especially in today's culture, I've noticed that it's not money that people value as much. Money is a necessity for taking care of and filling your life and doing the things you need to do. But that's not the focus anymore, especially the generations that are coming up and starting in the work field now. Now it's value on time. Time is the currency now. Time is what makes these individuals decide if the job's worth it. What are they getting for their time that they're investing into your company, your job? What are they getting out of that? Is this a positive return on that investment of time, or is it a negative return? If it's a negative return, well, these individuals are leaving these jobs a whole lot quicker and a whole lot easier and faster nowadays than they ever did before. Because now all of a sudden that investment of time that they've made, well, they're not seeing the return on it. Think of it like a stock market. You're putting money into the stock market, you buy a potential stock that you think is going to help make you some money, and it does a little bit, but it's not performing like you want it. It's not making you that money that you were hoping to get from it. And you start doing your research and you're starting to see some negative trends or things that may cost you to lose money, and you sell it. Well, we're talking about the same thing here. We're talking about a job. People are investing their time, which is their currency, into this job, and now all of a sudden they're not getting the return on that investment that they're looking for. Or start to see something that's causing them to lose time. It's costing them more time to have the job than it is to enjoy it. So they're leaving a lot easier. Maybe it's not one thing. Maybe it's not that there's something else. There's been more responsibility added that, they're not getting a return on. They've got all this extra stuff they've got to do, but nothing else has changed. They're not getting a higher return on their investment of time. And now all of a sudden, the job just doesn't seem worth it anymore. All these little things start to creep in. People start getting upset about different things through a job. And all of a sudden, that investment of time, the return's not what it should be. And the person has set their stop loss at a certain level, and they decided, you know what? It's time for me to stop losing. I'm tired of losing on my investment. But if they stop and think, if we all stop and think, obviously, again, it's a much more dynamic issue than something as simply as getting lost in the little things. But if the work itself hasn't changed, and it's all these extra little things that, at least when we first started out, we never paid attention to, is the job really changed? Has the job changed? By no means am I suggesting that if you're unhappy at your job and all these little things have caused you to make that decision that you shouldn't do it. I would never suggest that for anybody. I believe everybody has to do what they need to do for themselves to be happy. But before you do, stop and think about it. did these little things exist whenever you started your job? Well, if they did, and you're just focusing on them now, well, why are you focusing on them? You know, is it something that you can change about yourself to get you back to enjoying your job like you once did before? Again, I know a job is much more complicated than that. The issue of being happy in a job, there's a lot of factors in there that play into it, just like a lot of factors that play into relationships. But if all of these little things were there before, but you were able to overlook them, they didn't matter then because the work was enough. Well, if the work hasn't changed, then what has? You just started noticing these little things maybe, Maybe these little things were there this whole time, but because you enjoyed the work so much, the little things didn't matter. That investment of time was worth it then. I don't know. I started to think about that years ago when I first thought about this topic. I got to thinking about that years ago, and it was something that when I sat back and looked at my job, obviously in my career field, things are quite a bit different than the normal 9 to 5. But when I looked at it and kind of applied it to my own job, that was something I was like, wow, you know what? You're right. All these things really were here. The boss hasn't changed. The administration hasn't changed. Different people have put into different positions, but the administration lineup is still the same as far as, what positions are there. So it was all the little things that I was looking at that was making the job seem different than what it was when I was a rookie. And I thought, wow, okay, well, that was validation. That validated my whole thought process on the job still being the same. It was just the little things that I was getting tied up in that was making it seem less than what it was when I first started. But when I started to look at it from a different perspective, it made a difference. It kind of changed the outlook that I had. So it was interesting to me. And that's what this whole thing was about, The little things. When I applied it to every other aspect of my life, I noticed that it was these little things. These little things that made it seem like so much had changed in my life. Obviously I've changed and relationships go through different things and jobs go through different things and kids go through different things. And, there's a lot of things that can affect it other than just these small things. But in a lot of aspects, at least of my life, it was all the little things that I was letting myself get tied up in. I was letting myself see these little things and it was bogging me down. And it was making me look at things in a way that I never looked at them before that weren't positive. So I started trying to keep that in mind. And that's something that I've just kind of done in my life. And I kind of encourage everybody else to maybe think about it a little bit, Give it a try yourself. If there's something in your life that you're not happy with, or a situation in your life that you're not happy with, and be honest with yourself. Stop and think about it for a minute. Give it a little bit of thought. Try to push your anger or your aggravation or whatever the emotion that you're having aside. Push that aside and try to look at it and figure out what's actually caused you to feel the way you do. Is it the one big thing that's caused you to feel this way? Or is it a bunch of little things that have added up? A lot of people will look at these little things and think, oh, well, it's just this, or it's just that, or it's just this, or just that. But if you start adding up all these little things, well, then it makes it a real big issue. A penny is just a penny, but you get enough pennies, you got $1. You get enough dollars, you got quite a bit of money. So a little thing can just be in itself a little thing, but if you're adding up too many little things, well, now all of a sudden it seems like a big issue. And that's one thing, that's what I would challenge you to, Look at it. Is it little things that were always there that you're just focusing on now? that's causing you to look at this particular situation or series of situations in a less positive way? Or is it something more difficult? Obviously, if it's something more difficult, then there's different factors and different things you may have to do. But if it's just these little things, is that something you can get back to? Can you get back to not focusing so hard on all these little things to where you can get back to enjoying whatever it was? Your job, your life, whatever the case. Can you stop focusing on these little things that are always there and get back to enjoying it? I know for a lot of things in my life, that was something that made a difference. And I hope it can for you. I hope you can sit back and think about it, and you can notice all these little things that were always there. And you can make that change in yourself. I don't know. It's just my 2 cents. Just my way of thinking about it. Again, obviously, things aren't going to be that simple, and not everything is that simple at least. But maybe it is. Maybe you just have to stop and think about it for a minute. I don't know. Worked for me. Maybe it can work for you too. At least I hope it does. And I hope it kind of makes your life a little bit better. Make you get a little bit more enjoyment out of the one life we have. So, guys, I think that one about wraps this one up. I hope I didn't drone on too long and bend your ear too much, but I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the time you give me. So, until next time, hope everything goes well, and I'm always here if you need me. Catch you later, guys.
Hey, guys. I really appreciate you listening, and I hope this episode's been able to shed a little light into your life, or at least give you a little perspective. The fact you've shared some of your valuable time with me is absolutely incredible. This podcast is for y'all, and it wouldn't be possible without you. So hit me up with any questions or topics you want to hear about, and look for it in an upcoming episode. This is an open podcast, so if I can help, hey, that's what I want to do. Let me know. So until next time, be safe, and I'll catch you later.